You talked a little bit about self-scouting there. When you look at what the 49ers roster looks like right now and what they've been setting up for during free agency before the draft, they've done a lot of work on the defensive side of the ball. Not big money, not huge money, but they've added a couple of defensive ends. They've replaced Eric Armstead at defensive tackle with a starting caliber player, Malik Collins, and they've added some short-term outside corners that have a lot of experience. Is that to you telling us that they're really want to work on the defense and they're going to continue to work on the defense in the draft? Or is that telling us, all right, we know we can play here. We know we can field a team the day before the draft if we need to. Now we're going best player available. Or are they telling us we're doing our work in free agency on defense so we can go hit the offense in the NFL draft?
It's really hard to say, Brian, because it's like, the last couple of years they've gone for like one major free agent, and that's kind of it. It was Mooney, it was Hargrave, and then they were going to do their work in the draft. I just think that right now they knew they had a bunch of needs. I mean, they had 6 or 7 free agents on the defensive line, and I knew a number of those guys were going to leave. So it doesn't surprise me that they've added, Floyd and Collins and, Elliott and Gross Matos. And, it's like they were going to add a bunch of guys. And then, I didn't, some of their moves have surprised me. I didn't see them signing Devondre Campbell, but they did. Isaac Yiadom is a guy that I really liked out of Boston College a few years ago. And he's coming off a real nice year with the Saints. That might be kind of a sleeper pickup. But I just think now it's like they've kind of got themselves in a spot where they can go and trade up for one guy if they want, because they've filled their needs. I mean, what are their needs right now? They've got all 3 quarterback spots taken, though I think they may still add another quarterback. We'll see how that goes. Pretty deep at running back. You've got some tight ends. I mean, I think Cam Latu is going to be a whole lot better this summer than last summer. He was thinking way too much. It was causing him to drop the ball. He's kind of one of those guys that he was going to be he needed that redshirt year, but I think they're pretty good at tight end, though they probably could use somebody. They're decent at wide receiver if they keep their guys. Of course, the Ayuk thing kind of looms over it all. They're pretty loaded at running back. They're pretty loaded except for what's their future at center? What's their future at right guard? Is it Burford or is it going to be somebody in this draft? And what's the future at right tackle? So they need to build out the offensive line. They still have some good depth there, but I think they want to have even better depth. I think they need 1 D tackle, 1 D end, 1 inside backer, a true number 1 corner, couple safeties. So I think more of their needs, even though they spent a lot of money on defense, I still think they have needs on defense and obviously to rebuild the offensive line in what I think is an outstanding offensive line draft.
It's tough because everyone wants to tackle, right? And they brought everybody back. They even gave Colton McKivitz another year, but the money they gave Colton McKivitz to have another year on his contract is not the money you give to a starting offensive tackle. So that tells me they see him as a backup caliber player, because that's what he's being paid as. He's being paid like a swing tackle. And the fact that he's willing to take another year of that sort of pay tells me that he knows and his agent knows. They all kind of know where they're at now. He was a starter last year, and the 49ers were really good on offense. And we saw it with Aaron Banks. It's not that easy to jump in as a rookie in the NFL, especially on the offensive line. It takes most guys a year to, really get into the scheme, know what they're doing, especially with that Shanahan run game, because it's everybody moving as one unit. It's not 5 separate parts on the offensive line. Hit the weight room for a year, get that NFL strength. So we might see a draft of a first-round pick that doesn't see the field a lot as a rookie, especially if it's an offensive lineman. We saw that with Aaron Banks, who was a top 50 pick a few years ago, and it was like, oh my God, is this guy a complete bust? He wouldn't even suit up. He didn't have a uniform on Sundays. Shows up in year 2, and it's like, oh, never mind. They got a starting left guard. He just needed a year to be ready. So it's awesome that the 49ers have a first round pick. I'm excited because there's been 3 years of not being able to talk about a first round pick or a second round pick in some cases. So being able to look at some of these prospects that could be early contributors, that could be potential, who knows, star players for the 49ers, that's been a lot of fun. But I've had a really tough time trying to figure out which of those players that might be there late in round one the 49ers are going to swing for. And I do think that their draft plan right now, Larry, is best player available in round one. And then let's see what happens in round two based on what we got, what the league gave us in the first 30 picks to draft at pick 31. Because you could draft a corner. It could be Kool-Aid. It could be Darius Robinson, a big end. It could be Chop Robinson, a speed rusher. It could be an offensive tackle. It could be a number of different players. It could be a center, Jackson Powers Johnson, Graham Barton. And I think that'll inform us on what's going to happen on day two in the draft and beyond, and let the draft come to you. That's the way they should play it. And I feel like they've kind of forced need early in drafts, and it hasn't worked out as well for them. You've hit on Bosa, you hit on Ayuk. They're 2 for 7 right now, really on first round picks as a regime. So let the draft come to you. Draft best player available. I think that's the way to go about this for the 49ers. You mentioned trading up though, which is interesting. And if you feel like you don't have a lot of needs, and maybe you don't have 10, 11 roster spots that rookies are going to make your team anyway, you could go up. So if the 49ers were to get a little bit mobile on day one of the draft and move up, what do you think that target would look like?
That's a great question. And I always think trade back. I'm a trade back guy because I really believe I could have 7 bites of the apple in the 7th round. I would do it. Because guess what? I feel confident that I could pick Brock Purdy, and so if you feel like you could really handicap the draft well, why would you not want lots of picks at the end? But there doesn't that's not typically what teams do. I always laugh when people are like, they don't need, they've got 11 picks. They don't have 11 needs. Really? Let's count it. They probably could draft a quarterback. If there was a great running back there, that's one. They definitely probably could take a tight end, maybe a wide receiver, maybe 2 linemen, that's 6, a defensive tackle, that's 7, a defensive end, that's 8, a linebacker, that's 9, a couple safeties, that's 11, a number 1 corner, that's 12. I kind of think, I'm always looking to build the dominant team, the awesome team. So I think they got probably as many as a dozen needs, and I would like to have more picks than less, because any number, and you could get a star player in any round. As far as who are they looking to fall to them, I would say, the of all the tackles, the guy that makes the most sense is Troy Fautanu, because they don't know exactly which spot they're going to need. Banks is a free agent at the end of the year. Trent could retire. Brendel got abused by DJ Reader in the Bengals game. Feliciano is a nice stopgap guy, but he's a stopgap guy. We don't know about Burford. You already mentioned McKivitz, and we all know the struggles that he had, though I do think McKivitz is a little bit better than people think. But my point is, a guy like Fautanu, I think, is ready to play now. He looked great at the combine. He's got great speed. He's nasty. And he can play either guard spot, either tackle spot, or center. So in a lot of ways, I think Fautanu is the guy. And we just saw Chris Forster and Lynch up in Seattle at Husky Pro Day. And a lot of people were suggesting Roger Rosengarten is their target. But I think they want to take another look at Fautanu, because I think there's a chance they would trade up for him. And I think he's the right offensive lineman for them, because I think he's ready to go right now, and he could be utilized at any number of positions. So that's one guy. The other guy I think is the LSU receiver, Brian Thomas. He could fall, and that would be an exceptional player that fell. I guess you could say Brock Bowers, but I can't imagine Bowers is going to fall beyond like 16 or 17. Could they get up that high? But Bowers is, a great player. Truly great player. And he's from Napa. In a lot of ways, he's a George Kittle clone, but he's probably a better receiver. I'll say this. I like what Detroit has done with their new general manager and Dan Campbell. They're not worried about everybody's board. They're not worried about value. They're just identifying great college football players that they have conviction are going to be great pros. And then they're getting in position to pick those guys, and they're picking them. And they get Laporta, and they got the Georgia running back, and they got Brian Branch, and they're getting great players. And they're kind of copying the formula of, I think, the best drafting team in the league right now. And that's the Baltimore Ravens, who under Ozzie Newsome and now Eric DeCosta do the same damn thing. They look for great college football players. They're not worried that Tyler Linderbaum has a little bit shorter arms. That guy was an awesome player at Iowa. So they're just drafting him. They're finding great college players, and they're going to take a chance that they're going to transition to the pros. They're not taking workout warriors. They're not taking guys that lit up the combine but can't play dead. They're not taking guys who were the third best player on their college team. They're taking college stars, and they're projecting them into the NFL as pro stars, and they're not worried about value. And I think that's the route to go. I really believe in that. And I think Detroit's drafting right now as well as anybody. And that's why they're that's why they're coming, man. The Lions are coming. And they've had some incredible, high picks because of how bad they've been, Aiden Hutchinson and so on and so forth, Penei Sewell. But, what they've done the last couple of years in the draft, very, very impressive. And hopefully the Niners, who, the Niners have been good on day 3, but they have missed a lot. And they've missed on guys they've traded up for, which is even more discouraging. And I just kind of think that Shanahan ought to just defer to his scouts, defer to his personnel people, just acknowledge to himself, hey, man, I'm a great play caller. I'm a great play sequencer. I'm a phenomenal offensive coach. I don't know jack about the draft, and I can't pick my nose. So let's let somebody else do that.
Do you have a feel for what the 49ers are going to do at 31? If you had to guess right now, we're less than a week away from the first round, Larry. Who are the 49ers taking at 31? If you had to guess, you had to put money on one name right now.
To me, it would be probably I think they need a great offensive lineman. And I don't think it matters if that great offensive lineman is a center or guard or a tackle. They can't just take a good offensive lineman that plays the spot they need. They need a great player. That's how you win in this league, when you accumulate great players. I think Tyler Guyton is the guy that's the most like for them. I had a conversation in the locker room late in the year with Trent Williams, and he surprisingly had great knowledge of the tackles in the draft. And we started talking about Guyton, and he's like, yeah, man, that kid's a mauler in the run game. And Guyton's like 6'7", 325, played the right side. I think to me, he's a plug and play right tackle right away. And maybe 2 years from now, he could be, the replacement for Trent at left tackle. But if to me, he seems like the guy. Now, he might not be there. If you cover the Niners like we do, the one thing is they could have any number of needs, but by the time it gets to draft day, they're looking for a defensive lineman. You know what I mean? Yep. So, in a way, I think, if it was me, I think I would choose between Zach Frazier, the West Virginia center, and a defensive tackle, Johnny Newton, Michael Hall, Rukarororo, something like that. That's what I would be looking for. Greatness on either side of the line of scrimmage. Frazier, the more I watched him, the more I thought, oh my God, this kid's so. Jackson Powers Johnson is a better athlete, but Frazier's the guy. He was 48-0 as a high school wrestler. The guy's a great student. I interviewed his teammate Lee Koba, and he's like, man, this guy just shows up ready to play all the time. Baldy told me that a personnel guy told him that he felt like Zach Frazier could start for their team at center right away. So I kind of view him as a plug and play, dominant inline blocker who's great with leverage, great toughness, great smarts. And Baldy said something to me, Brian, that I thought was interesting. He said, Krug, you don't have a great, and this is an offensive lineman, because you don't have a great offensive line unless you have a great center. And now, granted, he's watching the Eagles and Kelsey, and he's probably impacted by that. But I really kind of agree with him. And if you go look at, some of the greatest teams in the history of the NFL, Steelers had Mike Webster, and the Dolphins had Dwight Stevenson, and the Niners had Jesse Sapolu and Randy Cross, and it's like the Cowboys had Stepnoski, and I mean, it's just like you do need a great center, and I think Zach Frazier is a great center, so that would be the guy for me. And if it's not him, I would love to see Michael Hall. I see Bryant Young and Michael Hall. He ran 4.76. He's the fastest defensive tackle in the entire draft. The guy plays with fire. He's one of the youngest prospects in the entire draft. He's only 20. I don't think he turns 21 until August. He's tough. He's physical. He's a great pass rusher. Everybody in today's NFL, it's kind of like the NBA where everybody's got to be able to shoot or they don't guard you. In today's NFL on the D-line, everybody's got to be able to put heat on the quarterback or they sag off you and combo block somebody else. And so, like, if you ever watch, the way teams defend Jonathan Hankins or, some of these guys that have no pass rush ability, these one technique run stuffers, if you can't give any kind of pass rush or push, they don't block you. They just kind of drift off you and combo block the guard, the other tackle or somebody else on the line. So I'm a believer that you've got to be able to rush the passer, and Michael Hall to run 4.76 at 300 pounds. And then he led the nation this year in pass rush win rate among all defensive tackles. I realize there's a lot of people think he's a late second round guy. Maybe you could go Johnny Newton. Baldy loves Johnny Newton. I'm a Michael Hall guy. One of those two guys, in my mind, could easily be the pick.
I love Johnny Newton as well. In my heart of hearts, Niners love D-line. Johnny Newton, if he's there, one of the Robinsons, Chop or Darius Robinson.
Love Darius.
Yeah, he just controls guys with his hands, long arms, big, powerful hands.
He was the practice player of the week at the Senior Bowl.
Unblockable, swimming over everybody.
Yeah,
controls line and can set the edge early downs, can move inside and rush. And the 49ers have had great success with those types of players recently. And instead of having like a one and done cast off free agent, draft your own guy that could stay around for a while and play a big time role there. So I like Darius Robinson quite a bit.